Front Desk, Chapter 23. Hank was waiting for me at the motel when I got back from school. "What are you doing home so early?" I asked him. Usually he didn't get home until well past 6. "The cops came around to the gas station. They started asking me questions, asking my employer," he said. "And?" I asked him. He stared into the tiny lines of the front wood desk. "And my boss freaked out and fired me. I felt the floor beneath me open up and swallow me whole." "What? But you didn't do anything wrong." "Doesn't matter. The boss said it was bad for business having the cops poke around." Hank pulled out a crumpled $100 bill from his pocket and slid it across the desk. "This here's my last paycheck," he said. I looked at the bill on the table. "What are you going to do?" I asked him. He didn't say anything. He just gazed out the window at the leaves in the pool. "Hank," I said loudly, "you have to fight this." Hank shook his head. "You don't get it, kid," he said. "I've been fighting my whole life. I'm done. It's no use fighting. People are going to be the way they're going to be." After Hank went back to his room, I searched the kitchen for canned foods. If that was his last paycheck and he'd just given it to us, he was going to need all the help he could get. I was in the middle of rummaging through our fridge when I heard a knock on the door. It was the security guard from the Topaz Inn 2 doors down. A Chinese guy about my parents' age, probably second or third generation from the confident way he spoke English. "Open up, I gotta talk to you," he hollered. I buzzed him in. "Heard you guys got a little visit from the cops," he said. A sly grin stretched across his face. The Topaz Inn people did not like us, and we didn't like them. To say that we had a little rivalry was an understatement. Every day, they tried to undercut our prices. They had a bigger motel, so naturally, they had more rooms, but we had a better location, being the first motel on our block. You had to drive past us to get to Topaz Inn, which drove them nuts. The Topaz people came up with all kinds of ridiculous tactics to get back at us, including one time when they had one of their people stand a few blocks up with a sign that said, "Don't stay at the Cala Vista. It's full of roaches. Stay at the Topaz." Mr. Yao happened to be driving by that day. When he saw what they were doing, he went straight to Ralph's, bought a dozen eggs, and hurled them at the sign. So it was quite a shock to see the Topaz security guard standing here in our lobby. "What do you want?" I asked him. "Look, I know we've had our differences over the years," he said, "but in light of what's happened, I've come to offer a truce." I stared at him. "A truce?" He nodded. "What happened over here last night was a tragedy," he said. "We were so upset when we heard about it." "Really?" I said. I would have thought they'd be celebrating. "Really," he said. "Now look, it's in neither of our interests if bad people stay at our hotels. It gives the area a terrible rep and business suffers. So why don't we do this?" He pulled out a piece of paper. "This here is a list of all the bad people we've checked in the last month," he said. I peered curiously at his list. "I'm sure you have a few names on your own you'd like to add to it," he said. I did, starting with the drunk guy. "So here's what we're going to do. You tell me the names of your bad people, and I'll tell you the names of our bad people. And I'm going to show the list to the Lagoon Motel people and the other stores on our street, so we're all in on it. And if anybody from the list calls looking for a room, we'll tell them the same thing, no vacancy. How's that?" I nodded. It sounded like a plan. I thought back to all the things that had happened these last few weeks. We could sure use some more safety around here. "Alrighty then," he said. He took out his pen, and I took out my dad's big ledger with all the customers' names and information. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready," I said. He grinned, revealing a mouthful of very yellow teeth. "Let's start with last month. Give me the names of all the black customers who have come through here in the last month," he said. I slammed the ledger shut. "Get out," I said, pointing at the door. "Hey, no need to get worked up," he said, holding his hands up. "I'm just trying to help." "Get out," I repeated. Suit yourself, he huffed as he walked out, stuffing his list into his pocket. But don't come crying to me when this place gets robbed again, which it will. Chapter 24. I rocked back and forth with the ledger in my arms, waiting for Lupe. I'd called her as soon as the awful security guard left. As her dad's car pulled in, the air howled of a coming storm. We have got to sneak over there and grab those lists, I said to Lupe. I couldn't wait to rip them to shreds. Lupe shook her head. She plopped down at the front desk. That won't do any good, she said. We'd get caught, and besides, the stores probably already have copies. Lupe helped herself to a blank piece of white paper from the fax machine and started drawing with a pencil. Lupe was always drawing buildings, people, dogs, cats, mountains, and most of all, trees. She loved trees. Will you stop drawing? I all but shouted at her. Lupe put her pencil down and gave me a look. The thing about prejudice is you can't tell people not to be prejudiced. You've got to show them. It's like writing. I thought back to what Mrs. Douglas was always saying, you gotta show, not tell. Why can't you tell people? I asked. Because they won't listen. It'll go in one ear and out the other, she said. So how do we show them? I asked. She pointed to the ledger still in my arms. Who was here that night? She asked. Does it say in there? I opened up the ledger to the day that the car got stolen and ran my fingers down the list of customers. There were 5 customers who left in the middle of the night. They were Peter Orviati, Rebecca Thompson, Tommy Smith, Javier Roberto, and Loretta Robinson. Next to their names, we'd copied down all their permanent addresses so that in case they left something, I could mail it back to them. The addresses sprawled as far south as San Diego and as far north as Sacramento. Have the police checked out these addresses yet? Lupe asked. I shook my head. To my knowledge, they didn't even have them. Well, what are you waiting for? Lupe asked. Call them up. The customers? No, the police. My eyes widened. We'd never called the police before, not even on the day that the car got stolen. Mr. Yao had been the one who called. Back in China, I had fond memories of the policemen. We used to call them Uncle, too. They'd help the elderly cross the road and find their way home if they got lost. I'm not even sure if they had guns. We'd sing songs in school about them, songs like, if I was walking down the street and I found a penny, I'd give it to the uncle policeman. Things were different here. Here, the policemen had guns, and if you found a penny, I'm pretty sure you'd keep it. I know my dad and I would. I went over to the drawer under the phone system and retrieved the card Officer Phillips gave us. He was the officer in charge of the case. I picked up the phone, dialed the number, and handed the receiver to Lupe. You talk, I told her. Lupe pushed the receiver away hard. No, this is your Mattel. You need to talk, she said. Hesitantly, I put the receiver up to my ear. Officer Phillips picked up on the 4th ring. Hi, Officer Phillips. It's, Mia Tang, calling from the Cala Vista Motel, I said. The what? The Cala Vista. You know the motel where the car was stolen the other day? I asked. Listen, kid, I've got a lot of work to do, he said. He sounded really annoyed to hear from me. I looked at Lupe, who nudged me to go on. I just wanted to ask you if you've looked into all the customers that left early that night. I have all their home addresses here. I can give them to you right now if you like, I said. Will you let us just do our job, kid? He said. We already have a strong lead. You mean Hank? I said. He didn't do it. How many times did I have to keep saying it? And by the way, did you know you guys got him fired from his job? He recently got fired from his job? Officer Phillips' voice perked up. That explains why he needed the money. No, you guys got him fired. His boss saw you guys asking him questions and fired him. I told him. Now he doesn't have a job. There was silence on the other end. I looked over at Lupe. Well, that's unfortunate, Officer Phillips said, but I'm sure there was more to it than that. I shook my head into the phone. No, there wasn't. Look, I really have work to do, he said. So that's it then. You're just going to give up. You're not even going to look into the addresses, I asked him. We're not giving up. We just have more pressing cases to deal with at the moment involving armed robbery. And what about Mr. Lorenz? What's he supposed to do? Oh, he's fine. I talked to him the other day. Already filed the claim with his insurance. Gonna get his money in 30 days. The good thing about this case is nobody got hurt, said Officer Phillips. And with that, he hung up the phone. Yeah, nobody. Except Hank. I stared at the phone in my hand. I couldn't believe that Officer Phillips. We have to call his manager, I told Lupe. He must have a manager. Lupe shook her head. It doesn't sound like this is top priority for them. Well, it should be. You'd think. What should we do? I looked down at the list of addresses. We can't go to all these places by ourselves. Maybe the car will turn up, Lupe said. Maybe someone will see it and put in a call. Maybe.